Good evening and welcome to this session on how to get hired in COVID. Now, of course, this year has been unusual for all of us in many ways, and I think one of the questions that everybody is thinking about is how do I emerge stronger from this challenge? And today, fortunately, one of the things that we will try and talk about is what can we do to look at this situation from a positive lens. What can we do to make sure that we acquire the right kind of skills and competencies so that we become more employable and actually better at our jobs and future jobs as we go along. We know that today's situation is very different from a typical talent market situation, because today we have a situation where there are more people in the talent pool in the market than maybe people who are going to hire, and therefore the first amongst equal will get that opportunity. Now, it is not easy because we know that India traditionally also has been a talent surplus market in terms of the overall number of people who are vying for a single job, and this current situation has only made it all the more difficult. Now, to help us navigate from some of these interesting challenges and to help us with some tools around how do we actually become better, how do we become anti-fragile, which is the word that we are now talking about, how do we emerge stronger from a situation like this, we have three esteemed panelists in no particular order. I just want to clarify. The first panelist that I want to introduce is Dr. Srinivas Chunduru. Now, Dr. Srinivas has been an executive entrepreneur and with more than 2 decades of experience across P&L management, business development, corporate strategy, M&A, investor relations, and HR. In fact, he is founder and member of board of Vans Group, and he also has experience in diverse industries like housing, finance, education, fintech, and so on and so forth. Not only that, he was also ex-group CHRO at Piramal, Ola, and then of course he was a business head and executive director at Piramal Housing Finance. I'm very sure that we will benefit a lot from his experience. So,
Thank you,
Dr. Srinivas, I request you to quickly just wave to the audiences so that they know it's you I'm talking about.
Yeah, thank you so much for the warm welcome.
Yeah, thanks. The second panelist, Saurabh. In fact, Saurabh is a global talent acquisition leader with more than 15 years of progressive professional experience in talent acquisition and related fields. He is at the moment actually, in fact, very interestingly, he at the moment also is deep neck in hiring for Asia and LATAM for OLX Group, and his experience has been around understanding talent needs of the different organizations, developing capabilities, solutions, and what can we do to get the best talent for organizations growth. So in fact, Saurabh will also, I'm sure, share his insights in terms of how the future of work looks like from his lens, and then we can see how we can better prepare. So Saurabh, welcome to this session once more.
Thank you, Pancham. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Hi. Yeah. Last but not least, Dr. Jesse Christian. Now, Dr. Jesse, again, actually, he is on the other side. When I say on the other side, he comes from the delivery experience. So his insights actually will be very crucial for us because he will be wearing the lens of a business leader, and he will share with us how, for example, we can look at becoming better because he has been managing actually HR services from the delivery side of it, and he gets to see very interesting insights, I'm sure, in terms of how his people are delivering services, what people are asking for, and therefore what can we do, for example, to look at becoming better as we go along. In fact, Dr. Jesse has more than 28 years of experience across different industries, which span across education, IT services, IT product development, HR consulting sectors, and IT enabled services. So I think all in all, I'm really looking forward to this exciting next 1 hour or so. Now, what we expect all of us to do actually is, if you have any questions, please shoot, and we will continue to look at all these questions, and we will keep asking at regular times. In some cases, we will be able to give maybe the names of the people who are asking the questions, but in some cases, in the interest of time, we will club some questions, and therefore we will not be able to name these people. Having said that, we will try and cover the wide gamut of questions that you may have to the extent possible. Given the time that we have, we don't promise all, but we will try and make sure that at least majority of the questions we are able to answer, right? Now, this is a session where actually audience is not passive. In fact, one of the things that we always do is we include the audiences. And on that note, I would request the audiences to do this. If you're on your computer screens, open another browser. If you are on your mobile phones, I would request you to go to www.menti.com. And I'll quickly share my screen. And when I do that, you will be able to actually see there is a small poll and the instructions to get into that poll. Yeah. So just to reiterate what I'm talking about, so I request all of you to go to www.menti.com, use the code 7767462, and you would see there is a question. So you have to rank these three in terms of what you believe would be the most important to succeed in the workplace of future. Okay, some questions have already started coming up, so we will certainly take those. But at the moment, let's look at. I'm just waiting for people to come to Menti. Yes, I can see some people have already started coming up with responses. So just to clarify, when we say ability to operate in fully digital environments, we are actually talking about a situation where you are not meeting in person with people, and all your work has to be on fully collaborative tools or IT enabled tools. The social and emotional skills that we are talking about are skills which are about collaborating, emotional intelligence. How do you take care of yourself? How do you stay focused even when there is ambiguity around it? So some of those skills are what we are talking about, social and emotional skills. And the cognitive skills are more, as we call, the thinking skills. How do I manage projects better? How do I solve business problems? How do I generate ideas? How do I select the right kind of ideas? How do I make decisions which are based on facts and data? So those kinds of skills are what we are terming as cognitive skills. So just for the benefit of all of us. So we'll wait for another minute, and then we will actually start looking at what these questions mean for us. Okay, so interesting. So I think in the interest of time, while others can keep chipping in with more and more, I think what I would like to do here is maybe look at the answers that we have got, and then I will request panelists to start looking at this one by one. So Saurabh, looking at this, what is your first reaction?
I think my first reaction is that probably we are reacting to virtual world just a little more than what we should. Virtual world always existed. It's accelerated in current times, but that's a short-term view to that. To me, the cognitive skills, which are the fundamentals to solving problems for industries, for people, will take the number one place, because that's what people in the world is looking for. Of course, I would like to follow it by social and emotional skills, and somewhere I would see that problem solving in isolation may not help us achieve where we want to go in business, we want to go in life. That's second. I think if we are equipped with these two, adopting to a digital environment is probably a very short term change that we need to be comfortable with. And in long term, we are not sure. We might go still a mix of hybrid, digital and a physical world.
Absolutely. In fact, thank you, Saurabh. So Dr. Jesse, any thoughts on what the results show and what Saurabh talked about?
I would say the digital environment is more at the background. It's just a platform, I would say. I wouldn't want to keep that as number one. Maybe in the last 8-9 months, we have come to a conclusion, or we have come to a situation as if that is the front ending of our lives, right? Because there are so many sessions and so many office meetings and MS team and all kinds of people. We were not aware of all these platforms. I'm not sure how many platforms were existing before, but right now I'm sure everybody knows to operate on every single platform available. So it could be a temporary thing, like Saurabh said. The third one is obviously the number one priority, cognitive skills, because we work in an organization because there is a client existing for us to be in an organization. Either we sell a product or a service, and we are trying to solve the problem to an end customer in some way or other, whether I am an associate or a very senior person. So obviously that would be the number one priority, why somebody wants to hire me for a job. Of course, the second one is equally important. Sometimes it is more important, because let's say we have hired about 10 people in a team. Now, after the people have joined in, now we try to figure out one person is having this family issue, another person is having father unwell, or so many other things which the team lead or the manager was not expecting to happen. So how do we deal with all these things? So I think number 3 is the most important priority. Why I am in a job, that would give me clarity on why I am existing in an organization, what will be the role. Then I need to have excellent number 2 skills, right, for me to succeed in that role. Number 1, I'm going as per the the ranking in front of me. The digital is just, it so happened that earlier I was meeting people face to face. Now I'm in a different virtual world, so I'm just learning to use it. I'm comfortable with that. Will we continue like this forever? I don't think so. We will have a combination of both.
Interesting actually. So Dr. Srinivas, your views on this?
Sure.
So we have heard Saurabh and Dr. JC, both of them say that digital platforms at the moment maybe is the effect of recency, because we've been now in the middle of it. But I think there are other skills which are more important. Your views?
Sure. I have a slightly contrarian thought on this. I would go by 2, 1, and 3. And the logic behind that is there are certain skills which we can develop by training, coaching, methodology, etc. There are a few things that we can develop it, but it cannot be from scratch. We need to, have it kind of naturally. So I feel that the second part that you're talking about is the fundamental rock base. And the reason why I'm rating 1 over 3 is, in my view, digital is not just platform, but also a fundamental business model. For example, 20 years back, retail was existence in particular format. Today, retail does not exist in that format, right? Now, no, that's part of digitization in my view, right? Who had imagined that 10 lakh gig workers are now taxi walas with Ola, and 4,500 IIT IIMs join a company like Ola, which is a taxi company, right? So in my view, digitization, maybe if I replace the word by continuous rediscovery of business model, if I replace that, probably my order of priority would be 2, 1 followed by 3. In a lighter sense and philosophical sense, Bhagavad Gita says to succeed, you need 3 things: Gyan, Karam, and Bhakti. Knowledge, action, and care. Right? Not in that order. So whatever coincidentally the 3 points that you talked about, it talks about knowledge, action, as well as care, to say so. So that's my viewpoint, that ability to go with the business model, because the fundas that you used in classic retail are not applicable. So therefore, digitization impact of that from that perspective has to be crystal clear. Certain skills which are people skills, social skills, EQ, empathy, using first principles, instinctively come naturally. You can develop a little bit, but not from scratch. The other tools are very important, but can be probably developed over a period of time. So that's my thought.
Interesting, actually. So interesting conversation on the fact that while all three are important, of course, different speakers are maybe giving different weightages to each of these. It is also a factor of maybe the industries that they are representing, and it is also a factor of maybe the immediate organizational needs that they are seeing from their view. Having said that, I think the important thing for us to realize is that if we want to succeed in a skill in an environment of future, we have to maybe get used to the concept of 100% distributed organizations, which, for example, is not the norm in India. But abroad, you will see companies like Miro, companies like Zapier, companies like GitHub. They exist. They're all multi-billion-dollar enterprises with no single office. Yet they work beautifully. They collaborate, and they continue to be successful. So that is one model that we cannot stay away from as a possibility. The second thing, of course, all of you talked about is the fact that, one, of course, I need to know how to do my job. I need to solve problems. I need to serve my customers. I need to make decisions. But what is also important is to look at how do I carry people along? How do I navigate myself and people who work with me, especially given the kind of volatility that we continue to see in the business environment. Of course, COVID is only one kind of volatility. The volatility could be of many other kinds, disruptive business models coming in, and so on and so forth. So folks, ranking is not as important as the fact that all three are important. Now, why are we talking about some of these skills is the question that now we come to, because the future of work is going to change. And in fact, just before the webinar that we were talking about, I was asking, so Saurabh did talk about the fact that he actually has some slides that he would like to share with us on how he thinks the future of work is going to be. So maybe Saurabh, I'll invite you to talk about that, and then we will try and maybe use these three skills in the context of future of work, and then help people see how they can develop some of these skills and how they can prepare better for getting jobs as we go along. Yeah, so Saurabh, over to you.
Sure. So if I look at future of work, like what Pancham has said, to me, that's something that we are experiencing right now also, or that's something which we experienced in last couple of years also. The scale and magnitude is very different. There are very few companies who have reached there. There are others who are trying to, and there are some who haven't started. Of course, in this pandemic times, a lot of companies made progress because that was the only way probably to deliver work, and that too in industries where it was possible. So if I look at future of work, I look at a couple of things. First, which comes to my mind is technology itself. If you look at artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of them are turning a lot of data which can be analyzed, which can help take better decision. Let me not use the word right because we'll know it eventually, but better decisions. And I also think a lot of work which is being done manually is now done I would say digitally, and that's where I would agree with Dr. Srinivas that from a perspective that he was speaking, means the consumer behavior itself is changing, and as a end consumer, your journeys are very different, and hence I also feel a lot of tasks which were done earlier manually will get automated. Like if we are not going to a mall for shopping, probably a lot of people who do the maintenance there may not be required. So that's one part, and how it affects the second thing which we will look at is demographics, which is what is happening around us. So if you look at the emerging economies, they are full of people who are young, straight coming to the workforce, and if you see the emerged world or developed one, as well as if you look at China, there you have seniors participating in gig economy. So I think the entire concept of gig economy, which usually is displayed in most of the I would say journals, is very very millennial mindset, very Gen Y, Gen Z mindset. I think a huge thing we need to look at is that there are seniors who are out from their experienced jobs, and they're also competing for very similar assignments that that are there with you. So that's the second part. The third part is, I think, which I feel is very important, is the individual himself or herself. The way that you will learn, the means three things I was looking at. the way you skill up in this environment, the kind of onus that you will have for your own learning, and kind of social security that you need to provide for yourself, which companies have been partly covering for these years, because the entire employment looked at a longer term perspective, that if you were to work with this company for 5 years, then company will invest XYZ. The moment you bring the gig economy into picture, the learning path somewhere is cut down, because organization doesn't know that after this assignment whether you're coming. The social security, which is a huge thing. Right now, if you look at a country like India, a lot of responsibility is with the private sector and of course with the government as well. But I'm talking primarily from a private sector perspective. Who will bear that? Who will bear those health insurances? Are we ready? And of course, means there are universities which produce the finest graduates, but once they do, how do they learn? Is that corporates? And if you take the corporate learning out of picture, then how does an individual continue to learn? So these are three things that I want to bring in picture, and then I will build on once Dr. Srinivas and Dr. JC share their views.
So before that happens, actually, thanks, Saurabh. You talked about very interesting thing. You talked about social security, and the fact is that new labor code also talks about it. Although, of course, we are still awaiting rules and all, so that we know how it will get implemented in practice. But one of the interesting things that has happened in the labor code is that for the first time in at least Indian context, we now have actually in employee, we have a gig worker and we have a platform worker, very clearly defined separately. So yes, in that sense, the future of work certainly is going to change, and government bodies are also recognizing it. I think it remains to be seen how this will impact the overall continuum of workforce and therefore the kind of work that we have. And in fact, to build on this idea, I will just invite Dr. Srinivas. I mean, your views, and then of course I'll come to Jesse.
Sure, thanks, Saurabh, for sharing that interesting aspect. And incidentally, one of the companies that I own and run called Van Skilling is in the business of gigs at the CXO level. And when Saurabh said that some companies are actually getting into that, I smiled, saying that this is what I try convincing most of our customers to say so. I think three important aspects, and that has got some implication on the skill set of the people. And this is my view. The new age companies, I mean, Saurabh works for one of the finest new age companies, be it Ola, Swiggy, all the, even as a matter of fact, Reliance is a new age company given the new transition. In my view, the days of quote unquote super specializations may not be the best way of moving, but a lot of general management skills are appreciated. So which means whether you are a college grad or you are having 20 years of experience, our ability to appreciate and get into different functions and to understand what drives business, I think that becomes a very crucial skill, irrespective of COVID or no COVID, to say so. So therefore, earlier days, for example, it's interesting that for a same listed company, I was a CFO followed by CHRO over a 10 years period of time, right? Now that was unheard of 10 years back. A lot of people used to say, are you okay? And, have you really thought through about your career moves, right? From a CFO of the same company to a CHRO. Today, you talk to a lot of youngsters, a lot of people, probably the life cycle of a function is 2 years, 3 years, maybe 5 years, and people, keep moving. So I think that ability to learn multiple functions and focus on the business is one aspect which is likely to, kind of change. Second, and I'm being very candid on this, the relationship between employee and employer. Okay, I passed out MBA in 98. Okay, so I'm saying right from probably 1970s till 2000s was, especially in India, was an emotional relationship. When I say emotional relationship, it was, there was no contract. It was more of a mind-to-mind contract, heart-to-mind contract, those kind of things. So anybody who's quitting a job, okay, a lot of people would counsel them saying, have you thought through, etc. But because in some generations, if you look at it, my father worked for same company for 42 years. Coincidentally, I worked in the same company for 20 years. But today it's okay, because earlier I used to be very judgmental when I used to look at people's resumes where every 2 years he or she is changing a job. No more. I think so. Therefore, the relationship between employer and employee, quote unquote, is slowly becoming a Western concept of we are saying that we are here to work. We'll finish the work with a lot of passion. We'll do our best, but it's no more a wife-husband relationship, to say so. but it's more of a contract between us. So I think these two things I pick up from what Saurabh is saying, what is likely to happen and what's happening currently. Yeah, over to you, Pancham.
No, thanks a lot, Dr. Srinivas. You actually talked about very interesting thing. You talked about job hopping is no longer seen as a negative thing, especially if you know that you have contributed enough, and that actually allows me to delve deeper into the more practical and maybe brass tacks, because a lot of people have also asked this question. How do I, for example, show that in the 2 years or whatever tenure, which is not a lifetime of employment, have I added value to the organization, or how can I showcase my achievements? How can I not be seen as a drifter? And that is a question that I will actually use to get into how can I start working on my resume. How do I make it look better, despite and not feel guilty about changing jobs every 2 years or so? So, Dr. Jesse, this is a question that I would like to start with you, and then, of course, we will continue to build on this question.
Okay. Before I get into talking about the resume, I have a few points about the previous question, right?
Sure.
Now, interestingly, I finished my PhD in HR in 2017, and prior to that, I was the Vice President HR at Hinduja Global Solutions for India Operations for about 4 years. I did a lot of work in employee retention. Okay, so that prompted me to study further, and I went for my PhD in HR. All my papers published, and my final thesis itself was on employee retention. So while I appreciate the views of Dr. Srinivas, I have slightly a contradictory view there, right? I do understand maybe the mindset of youngsters today could be like, okay, I work for 2 years, 3 years, I shift. But I belong to probably, in the mindset point of view, a traditional person, right? I come with the concept that there is something called 100% employee retention. Is it possible? Practically, may not be possible, but can the HR person or can a team lead, can a manager go with the mindset every day to his or her office or wherever the team is? Can the person wear this hat and start to operate from that mindset? It is possible to a large extent, right? It is like expecting the Indian cricket team to go and win every single match. Can they win every single match? Answer is no. But can they go to the match with the mindset that I am going to play to win the match? That is possible. So, well, now taking a few additional things on this, coming back to the future of work, just a couple of points I have there. In my view, more than the work part of it, I think the relationship and the way in which the people manage the team itself is going to change dramatically. Even today, I can see a lot of micromanagers existing in various pockets, right? Last 7-8 months, they actually had a lot of challenges, because in micromanagement means I am seeing you, I am actually, whatever you do, I come and find fault with you. That is one of the aspects of a micromanager, right? Now you're not able to see. You are always tense now. You don't know what the other person is doing because everybody's working from home. It's all remote working. So this micromanagement will collapse actually. If I am a micromanager, I will not be successful in future. It's as simple as that. So there is an element of trust coming into play now, right? I should trust people because I'm not able to see people on a daily basis. Plus, there should be a lot of delegation of responsibilities. I have to coach people. I have to mentor them because it's all virtually happening. If I go with the traditional mindset of control, it's not going to work. Then the teamwork, individual contribution and teamwork. Okay, I'm sorry. These are some of my views about the previous point. Okay, coming to the resume part.
So actually you talked about it and I was about to ask you. So now how do I show on my resume that I am not a micromanager? I am a great team worker, collaborator. Actually that would help the people also who are listening in, because that is an essential feature of how they will also get judged in terms of first impression.
Yeah, see, one of the things I had put in place in especially in HGS was Hinduja Global Solutions was each team lead had about 15 to 20 associates working under them. Okay. Now, the mindset was the organization always felt that people at the grassroots level, they come and they leave, right? They join a company and they abscond. So anything happening in the organization, people at the grassroots level was blamed, right? They abscond, they don't have maturity, They don't know how to stand up and work in the right environment, etc. So one of the aspects I tried to study was, why do people abscond? Right now, can a person with 10 years experience, 15 years experience, can he or she abscond? Technically, yes, but that person doesn't abscond. You know the reasons? Nothing great. It's a very selfish reason, because someone with a good amount of years of experience know that I need the relieving letter. Whereas the poor associate who is getting around 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 rupees, for him that salary is very important. Somebody gives 2,000 rupees more, that is more important for the family than this relieving letter. So it is nothing different. In fact, when I studied more about the associate level, I felt that their need for the job is much more than you and I. With our qualifications, our experience levels, we can easily find another job. But at the associate level, actually nobody joins to leave a company. This is another interesting thing. Even if the salary is only 5,000 rupees.
No, you're right, Dr. Jesse.
Yeah.
So therefore the question, for example, is, so when I, as a recruiter, when I'm looking, because see, today the fact is that I have one vacancy in maybe 1,000 applications. How can people stand out? That is the question that we are actually trying to now answer. So what can I write in my resume so that despite maybe having smaller stints, it does not come as an adverse point and comes as a positive point? So any tips on people as to how they can they can prepare their resume? So that's the question, actually.
Sure. Even if the stint in a particular organization is very limited, let's say 2 years,
that's what
3
we're
years,
talking, that it's become now smaller. So yeah.
Yes, even if the stint is very small, what is important is what has been my actual contribution to the organization, be it individual, be it team. If I am a team lead, how many people I have retained, how many people I have coached, how many people I have groomed before I have gone to the next organization. So
what you're saying is
ask for proof?
So I'm sorry, you were saying that we should list our accomplishment.
Exactly.
Instead of talking about the job that I was doing, we should talk about our accomplishments, right?
Exactly.
Okay, cool, thanks. So in fact, let me just come roll back to Saurabh, because in your role, chances are your teams and you yourself would have seen many resumes. So one is, of course, Dr. Jesse has talked about the fact that we should certainly look at putting on resumes our accomplishments. Any other thoughts that you have?
Yeah, I think for me, what I clearly look at in the resume preferably is the impact. So whether you've stayed in that company for 2 years or whether you've worked with that company for 10 years, what I want to understand is what was the impact of your work delivered. Simply the work delivered may not be a full indicator. Second thing, also what I don't want to see is the list of everything that you did. Possibly some of the roles clearly from an industry perspective. Let's also look back that who looks at the resume. One recruiter who possibly looks at the similar resumes, like 100 resumes in a day, and understands, like typically for a associate role or for a vice president role, what are the roles and responsibilities. And let's also look at a 30-second thing, which I know if I say this, I'll be hugely criticized in the industry. The fact is that to get a recruiter's attention for more than 30 seconds will be difficult. And take it to yourself that if you have to do many other tasks and also screen at least 100 profiles a day, would you spend 15 minutes on each profile? Just not possible. So probably, one-page resume is a huge hit on the tech industry. If you look at most of the advanced tech organizations, their CEOs have one-page resumes, and that's in. But I know that if that's difficult to do, possibly 2 or 2-page, but please do not do 3, 4, 5 pages, right? And second is also bring relevance to the fore, right? We all know that in universities we have been sport champions. It's great, but more elaboration on what are the learnings that from there you've invested in your current jobs, and those outcomes would definitely help. And kind of a lot of candidates put their confidence on skills. I would also look at the projects that they've delivered. So from a recruiter standpoint, for me, important is how does the journey has progressed. I will not put somebody who has a 6 months stint on a resume saying that, oh, this guy moved. There might be reasons. There are reasons which are professional, which are beyond company, for which you move. And sometimes there are reasons for company, and sometimes there are personal reasons. But what you've done before and after in that entire journey also does matter.
Okay, so adding to the fact that it should be accomplishment based, it should be brief, and an accomplishment does not have to be everything one has done, but one or two accomplishments per stint that stand out. That's what you're talking about. Now, Dr. Srinivas, now I'm going to maybe divert a little. So one of the things that we have seen recruiters talking about is I can't shortlist this person because his resumes have a lot of spelling mistakes. A lot of times the resumes which are better formatted normally get through, and resumes that are poorly formatted, they don't. So have you seen this kind of trend in the first place, and does it actually really matter if the resume is formatted right or not? That was the other question that I thought I'll ask you.
Sure. So I think I'll divide the answer into two parts, fresh from B school or engineering school and with experience kind of thing. We have an extreme problem. You go to a B school or an engineering school, the problem is everything is formatted, which means
Yeah.
no two resume looks different. And this morning I was talking to somebody and I was telling them, in a B school, I was telling them that probably out of 100 students, 60 of them are in placement committee, 25 in event committee, and 15 in mess committee. So there's nothing unique about it. So, at the B school level, graduation level, in my view, I think what one has to wear a hat is there are 3890 B schools in India. Leave the top 100. The rest of them are similar position wise, etc. So unless you customize and show the business impact, when I say customize, I'm not saying fabricate. What I meant is for the company, what is that they are looking for? And therefore, in all likelihood, what is likely to appeal and what's the impact that you would have created? I think that matters. So, a bit of customization, especially the projects, this, that, all of that stuff needs to be spoken about at the B school level and graduation level. Probably with a lot more experience, I think some of the sections can be done away with. Yes, it is very important because somewhere your inability to spell it rightly or check it and formatting, etc., is also a state of mind, which would talk about your clarity and seriousness on the job that one is talking about. Gone are the days when you are going to print and send it. I mean, most of it comes on electronic form and PDF form. So, in my view, I think we should get away with quite a few sections. So, for
Mhm.
example, a lot of people write strengths and weaknesses. I mean,
Correct.
in my career and Saurabh's career and Jesse's career put together, we would have seen 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 resumes, and the strength and weakness don't change. That's because probably, ability to express certain things, tangible, intangible. Yeah. Similarly, some of the things like given an opportunity, I'm going to work very hard. That is very obvious. So I think some of the sections can be done away. And as Saurabh rightly said, one page, great. If not one page, at least have it much more reasonable. Third, I think when we talk about and I'm saying this with responsibility, I feel as much for an HR as much as I feel for finance, but I'm sharing this. Part of responsibility also lies with recruiters, right?
Yes.
Often what happens is we also, when as recruitment hat, if I'm wearing or anybody is wearing, especially the younger lot, would go for a keyword search in their eyes, correct? Because one, I mean myself not understand very deeply about that particular thing. So given the fact that you can't educate all the set of people looking at your resume, customizing of resume is fairly important from that perspective. Personally, just as an FAQ, if somebody asks what are the problems one sees in the same resume, you will find people with three tenses: past, present, future tense all put together. You'll have enough grammatical errors. You'll have sequential errors. For example, you would have situation where you know he or she is showing two companies at the same period of time. It's a copy paste error, obviously, but somebody needs to check. So I think while it appears superficial, but I think for the first cut, Saurabh says 30 seconds, probably it's 15 or 45 seconds. Very, very important that it has to capture my attention. That was this one thing is worth it for me to talk to this guy. Yeah. So
Correct.
that's my suggestion. And don't over standardize it, customize it for the company, because every company would look for slightly different characteristics in human beings. Over to you, sir.
No, actually, very interesting points that we all talked about. One, of course, accomplishment. Second, accomplishments that matter for the role that I'm applying should be highlighted. Third, a resume does not have to be overly done. but it has to be neat, clean, grammatically correct. At least timelines, that basic sanity check we must do, because if we and a lot of things that we keep putting in the resumes, at times the entire description of our families, our hobbies, and many other things which may or may not be required at multiple points in time. So we should try and think about what to keep, what not to keep, what is relevant for the role that I'm applying. In fact,
So Pancham, only one small point I had over here is that, the definition of resume also in my view has changed. A resume is no more the piece of paper you send it, but it is also your LinkedIn profile to all of that stuff.
yes,
So
actually
we
that
have to
was
be
my
little
next
smart and
point.
logical in that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was actually the point that I was trying to make. So today,
Okay.
for example, so resume reaches people later,
Mhm.
but active searches, the LinkedIn profiles actually reach the recruiters first. And therefore, so Dr. Jesse, maybe
Yeah.
if you have to give one tip to people, how they can manage their social media profile on LinkedIn or any such engine, which is professional networking site, what would that one tip be?
I think it is important to build your social media profile in a particular way without complicating it. For example, you would like to highlight all your professional achievements, right? Every 3 months, you are doing some new things. Don't suddenly put in some photographs which will take out the seriousness of the people who are connected with you. You can always give a lighter side about you as a person, but if somebody is trying to hire you, somebody is trying to track you last 4 years, 5 years, how professionally you have been growing. It's not about changing the name of the company, start time, end time. That is a small thing. During that period, during that journey, what are additional things you are posting? I have seen people posting few things like this. Suddenly, one family photograph, right? I mean, I'm not saying it is not required. Maybe there is a Facebook for it, or you can choose another platform to project it in a different way. Because LinkedIn, as I see, it's a very professional platform. People come to it mainly to get a overall personality of the individual. So I would say don't mix up these things in one platform. Keep one platform specifically dedicated for what you want to project about you in that platform. This would be my
Well,
view.
that's actually a very interesting thought, Dr. Jesse, and thanks for that, because I think most of the times we don't realize that every post is accessible to people, and we create an impression every time we post whatever we do, and therefore we must post responsibly. So that's the message that you have for people. So Saurabh, now actually, so one is about posting that we talked about. The second thing we talked about is build a profile in a certain way. So now, if for example, the question, very specific question to you is, how can I differentiate my resume from my social media profile? That is one. And how can I make sure that they talk to each other? Because ultimately people would always try and corroborate the facts. So that is a question that I thought maybe I'll pose to you.
Right. I think on a lighter note, the story should be the same. So I've often seen story getting off the rails. So that should not be, but I think most cases it's given. When I say this, simple things for me is like on LinkedIn profile is where you worked 5 years back, and your resume has 5 more companies after that. I don't mind 5 more, but at least be it brings me back to the question: is that did you not have a time to update it, or did you not want to update it? And if you don't want to update it, then what was the reason why you didn't want to? So I think let's
Okay.
park that as a simple example, but also look at that your profile should be a reflection of professionally how you have grown. Your resume should be giving a detailed view of what are the projects, what are the impact, what are the accomplishments you have done. In some cases, as I would agree with Dr. Srinivas, that the resume needs to be customized for the role. So
Yeah.
it should bring in that flavor, but your professional profile should be comprehensive, crisp snapshot of what you have done in your career and how you have grown.
Well, actually, interesting point that you talked about. So one, of course, we are talking about the fact that we should be responsible about what we are doing. So that's one. Second is we should be consistent. So that means that we should not have our social media profile lagging where my resume, for example, has more updates. So it is always better to be updated even on the social media links or professional networking senses. So Dr. Srinivas, now, I'm now actually coming to you with maybe a slightly different question. So what we have seen in many LinkedIn profiles is people normally cut and paste career objectives as the same objectives that they would put in the resume, and also their role, the way they describe, and their journey that they describe is actually very similar to what they describe in resume. In fact, there is one thought that LinkedIn actually allows you to be more creative, and maybe allow a deeper peek into who you are as a person. So what's your view? Should it be very crisp and very curt as a resume is, or LinkedIn can actually become slightly more worded, more creative, more intimate? Let's put it this way.
Sure. Interesting question. There are enough companies, and I'm sure in our experience, all of us have come through that, which are AI-based, human intelligent companies, if I can say so, which almost would do the analysis part of us to give us a single page note on the personality of the person based on the social media behavior. In fact, there's a tool in one of the companies I'm associated with where whether the guy is currently engaged in the company or not is also picked up from social media and the keywords used by the people to say so. So all I'm trying to say is that there's enough science on essentially, what you mean and what does it come into. So I think my viewpoint over here is that it's not really the usage of word which is more important, but relevance to the context that is important, right? So for example, if I had participated in an annual day of my company, great, that's a great thing, but is it really relevant for if I go to Dr. Jesse for a job, does he really care for that? Really, probably no. I think that ability to filter, that's one part. Second, I think, as you rightly said, I'm being responsible, but candid as well, is that the moment you look at too much of fabrication over there, I mean, any intuitive sense, managerial sense will tell you that it's a fake resume, okay, or a fake LinkedIn kind of stuff. I think we have to be extra careful about that. The moment you go generic or you try being, you're okay to be creative, but you should not be imaginative, right? So I think without distorting the facts as deep as one can go and do that. For example, a lot of LinkedIn profiles, you talk about you being, top X percentage of employees. Now, anybody with 15 years of experience, really do we know that? I mean, do you really can prove it if somebody is going to talk about that, right? So you have to be really careful about, what you use. I'll go one step later. All of us would have some publications. If you're working for 10, 15 years, you're quoted somewhere and you will get certain awards and stuff. You'll also have to be careful about what do you want to position. Okay. Now, for example, again, saying with responsibility, there are enough awards where 5,000 people are in top 50, right? Okay, and a little bit of Google will tell us that people don't talk positively about it, right? So therefore, I think
I think we lost Dr. Srinivas. So maybe what we can do while he actually resets his connection, we can actually move on. And I will actually take cue from Dr. Srinivas. So he talked about actually my LinkedIn profile, my resume, and the fact is that there are enough and more tools which actually start screening. And therefore, what we always say is that people actually should know the search engine optimization hacks at times. Having said that, the other important thing is, for example, and that's a question to you, Dr. Jesse, now. So we know that wording the resume and LinkedIn profile right actually helps us get through the first screen, that my resume is relevant, right? The question therefore is now that I have got my resume included in a shortlist, now I have an interview, right? So what can I do to ace the interview?
Okay. So are you asking this question in connection with the LinkedIn profile or just to?
No. LinkedIn profile plus resume, because at times
Sure.
you would find that recruiters talk to you basis your LinkedIn profile, at times basis your resume. The fact is that you still have to ace the interview, and therefore the question therefore is, what can people do to ace it? Because I think most of the people would want to know that.
Sure. I think it is based on the position I'm applying for, and if I have clarity in terms of the organization, the domain, the vertical the company is into, and the role I am applying for, the company's website, the company's type of work which they are doing in that location, many times what happens is the candidate is expecting the interviewer to tell all these things. In reality, as an interviewer, I am looking for a candidate who has done some kind of a research about the job. So the candidate, I would expect the candidate to ask me some relevant questions. Many times I ask the reverse question. Okay, if a person in my team has done the first round interview, I am going to the second round interview. The questions I would be asking is, in the first round discussion, my colleague has explained about the opportunity. Can you please explain that to me now? If a candidate can articulate at least closer to reality, I think I am reasonably convinced that the listening skills are good. The person feels that the fact that he wants to attend the second round of interview and he is able to explain this, whether there is a gap of half a day, 1 day, 2 days gap between first round interview and my interview, plus the person, if he or she has done some extra work to prepare and try to impress upon me, not in a superficial way, trying to give me an indication that I think I am the right person to be hired. If some of these things are matching, because I'm willing to train the person, I'm willing to coach the person, but I want the person to do at least some bit of initial preparation and then look for a job.
That's actually very interesting. Yeah. So you talked about something very interesting, and thank you for that. So basically, what you're saying are two things. You're saying, one, people should make effort in preparing, learning more about the job, about the company, and maybe about the role, and at times maybe about the manager who's going to interview. The second thing you are saying is, if, for example, I'm going from one screen to the other, I should not forget that I should remember what happened, transpired in the previous conversation, and at least my clarity about the job should be consistent across, because I should not have a situation where I've not understood the job, because most of the managers would actually not take you ahead, because if you cannot demonstrate basic clarity about the role and still move ahead, then how can I trust you with work which is slightly more complex maybe? Great, thanks. So in fact, moving on to Saurabh. So Dr. Srinivas, when we saw your connection moved out, so we thought we will proceed. So that's where we are. We are now talking about interview as a process. So Saurabh, now you would have, in your personal experience also, you would have seen multiple kinds of people coming for interviews. So if you have to look at people who you really like in an interview versus people who you have not, for example, selected, what would be some of those differentiating features of these people, successful and not so successful, during the interview conversation?
I think for me, it's fairly simple. The people that I like first and foremost are the people who know their own stuff. The huge problem with this keyword SEO optimization is that you tend to put more things than possibly what you can chew during the interview, and that's where you fail to deliver on that day. You were great in first round, but second round you did. So and also in that I would bring self-awareness. It's okay to accept that I haven't done this, because nowadays what we were discussing a couple of minutes back is that organizations are looking to solve problems which haven't been solved in past. The huge responsibility on you on being truthful that you haven't done it, but here is how I have done something, and probably that makes me a candidate that I will do it for you as well, because I have done a different gig, rather than using the same keywords and saying, A to Z, I have done it. Now that you are doing it for the first time in the world, that's okay, but I have already done it. So that's the first part, which is your own thing. Second part, which we have been discussing, the delight is the candidate who understands your business or is very curious to know what you guys do. So there are two aspects. One, that you understand and you have resources. Unfortunately, in this world of internet era, saying ignorance doesn't help, because the resources are available easily to everyone. Means now you can practically learn about the business models of any organization. So probably some of us who started our career early may be lucky that you could ask very basic questions. But now if you ask a very basic question about my platform, then I'm worried that either you are off the internet or probably you have the resource and you choose not to use it, and both are not great signs. So for me, there are two things. One is know about yourself very clearly, what you can do, what you have done. And second is when you come to the real job, then know about it, ask questions. If you made wrong assumptions, you've read wrong things, please clarify. That shows that you are interested and you're investing your time.
Actually, interesting thing that you talked about, Saurabh. So you talked about the fact that, of course, so first thing we are saying is I should listen. I should be engaged throughout the interview and the selection process. That's what Dr. Jesse talked about. You also are talking about the fact that I should do my homework because it shows that I'm engaged. And that homework cannot be only basic things about the setting of the scene, but more about what kind of challenges the organization is currently facing, maybe, and how my experience can help in some of these things, because that's what interviewers would want to look at. Now, now there is another reality that actually dawns on us, and the fact is we talked about it right from the beginning. We said that today the situation is that this year maybe quite a few people would have had a situation where they would not have a job. They would have a job today, and maybe after a month they would not have a job, and now they are trying to get back into the job market, but there is a, let's say, 3 month, 4 month, 5 months gap between the previous job and the new job that they're now applying for. So the question that somebody has asked is, how do I deal with that on my resume, on my social media profile, and in an interview? So Dr. Srinivas, that's a question that I thought I'll direct at you.
Sure. So I think there has to be consistency in thought, speech, action. I don't think being little smart or tricky about it would help. Yeah. So what do I mean? So I think given the situation and most companies are going through, it's absolutely fine to tell that the company 1,500 people got laid off, and I'm one of them. But what is not okay is you have done nothing about this in the 5 months or 4 months is not okay.
Yeah.
So if I were an interviewer and somebody tells me that I worked in an ad agency and this is what happened over there, that's fine. I don't think anyone would be judgmental about it. But what we would like to know as an interviewer is, what have you done in this 4 5 months? Of course you'll spend some time in trying out, but what skill have you developed? What reflections did you get about this? So maybe whoever asked you that question, they need to reflect a little bit that how did they upgrade themselves, or what skill of theirs they have developed over there. I don't mean just attending webinars, but what I meant to say is that this is the time for you to pause and think through what is it, and present that to the people. Absolutely, fine. And I think one has to be very upfront on that, whether it's resume or whether it is an interview. Beating around the bush that I was not well during that point of time, however this happened. Probably each of us are experienced enough to judge that there is an integrity question. So I think it's very simple: thought, speech, action. If it is consistent, and there is a logic that during this point of time, beyond your control, something happened, but you have learned a new things, I think it will be a very welcome thing to talk about.
That's actually, I'm glad you talked about it, because see, I think more and more the organizations are saying that it's a reality, right? And there is no point shying away from it. But what is important is the downtime that you have. What have you done with it? Because that is also an indicator that if you're a constant learner, then I know that I can bank on you to be in a never before situation, and yet come back, maybe learn from here and there and do the job. And that's what we need. Like we cannot solve all the problems of future, but if we have a thinking mind and if we can demonstrate that, then I will be given a chance to solve at least one of them. So that's a very interesting point that you talked about. And now actually coming to the same point, I'm now actually taking the same point forward. Now see, one of the things that we have noticed that people write beautifully on their resume, and when I ask, for example, as a recruiter, that tell me what did you do, or tell me about this accomplishment that you have mentioned, and people fumble because they start giving generic answers. So is there a better way to structure their responses so that the recruiters also feel comfortable that the person has actually done that work? So Dr. Jesse, your view on that as to how can people structure their responses in an interview, which actually make sure that what they have written on the resume is as impactful as the interview that they're actually giving. So how should this talk about their accomplishments? Is there a format? Is there a template that you have in mind that works?
Yeah, so I'll give you a few examples. Okay, let's say if I am going to recruit a recruiter into my company, somebody coming with 3 years experience, right? I would expect the recruiter with 3 years experience to tell me, not in terms of English, I have recruited several hundreds of people, right? I want the person to tell me with data if the person has worked for 3 years in the same company, for example. Year one, my offers during the year, I made so many offers, so many people joined. My offer to joining ratio. If as the recruiter I can speak with specific data, I am more impressed and interested in that person, right? Because many people don't have this data. Many people say, yeah, even if you speak to a, let's say you want to recruit a recruiter for a recruitment firm, even people with 5 years experience, 10 years experience, many times they come and tell, yeah, I have done, I had 3 joinees in these companies. If you ask specific thing, what is the billing value, right? As a recruitment firm person, you recruit for a fee, 8.33%, 10%. I am interested in hearing the specifics. 5 years experience, I should say, I did 47 lakhs. I brought 47 lakhs revenue to the company last year. That makes it more interesting than saying, yes, I have recruited. I think I have this thing will not help. When you want to hear specifics, so for every function, right? If I am a BUHR person, okay, I would like to hear that person telling me my attrition is like this. In my business unit, it was like this, percentage wise. I did this initiative. I'm able to retain 18 more people. I want to know what you did with that one more initiative you did, right? People do one clapping exercise thinking that, 5 more people you can retain. If you can measure it, great, right? You sponsor 50 people for TCS marathon, great. Do we try to measure what is the retention effect based on that? I have done that in HGS. We used to sponsor 100 people, right? We formed a small club, all youngsters. Believe it or not, year after year, those guys were trying to improve on their timing. They had a lot of issues in their job, but they knew that company will sponsor for TCS 10K run. They will wear with one HGS t-shirt. They were trying to compete with each other in terms of timing. 1 year, they were able to withstand all the job pressures. Some mechanism should be there. If I am an interviewer, I would like to hear only data, whether it is a fresher or with experience. More experience, more data should be there. Less of English, more data. These are my
So
views.
actually, you talked about something very interesting. So in fact, there is a framework that quite often we use called STAR. So we always say the candidates should talk about what was the situation, what was the task assigned to me, what were the specific actions I took, and what was the result. And wherever possible, quantify everything in terms of cost, quality improvement, time, and so on and so forth, which is exactly what you talked about. Now, see, this works beautifully for those people who have reasonable experience. Now, Saurabh, the question to you now is, people that, and in fact there is a question also on the similar lines, there are people who are fresh out of college with maybe no experience. How can they use star or accomplishments, and how can they talk about measurables to impress upon the recruiter that they actually should be given a chance in terms of their first job with the organization, especially when they're competing with experienced people?
So Banjan, I would first say thank you for asking this question. Most common question of hiring people fresh from campuses in last 12 years. This is a very, very common question that everybody has. And I think we get too drifted by people's number of years of experience for professionals. Let's understand, if you're talking about situation task, I think the day that you start walking is the day that you have a star. Means it need not be delivering $1 billion revenue for the organization. When you list in your resume that I was let's say I was in mess committee or I was in cultural club, that is where you said that this is the value I brought. This is how the function scaled up. I'm talking about one day event. I'm not even talking about your entire 3-4 years of studies or 6 month semester. I'm talking about the one event where you contributed, and your ability to recollect that data. What Dr. Jesse said, it's your own data. If you don't remember it, it's great. Means I understand we are all normal human beings. We are not Einstein. Then please take that half an hour from your busy schedule and just go through the numbers, so that you know, if you are able to give me, and you know, very I think common examples, especially professional studies like engineering, CA, I would say MBA. Many of the professional courses have their internships or projects. Nowadays, I see all across the streams there are projects and internships, but especially professional courses have that. And the moment you come to internship, it's 2 months internship and you did one project. And that is where my question starts, and that's where the star breaks. That what is the activity you did and what is the result, and that's where I think it's very easy to plug in. Just get your things together, spend a little time if you don't have it fresh on your mind, but expect that interview may ask.
Oh, in fact, I'm glad that you talked about it, because the fact is that our lives before we get on to the job, at least we have covered 25 years or 23 years, and there would have been enough and more opportunities for us to demonstrate leadership, be it as a school captain, be it captain of a school team, and so on and so forth. We should not shy away from talking about those, but more importantly, what we learned, and also quantify it to the extent possible, because like Dr. Jesse said, people want to, the recruiters and the managers, they want to hear data. And that's an important piece. Yeah. So in fact, a related question. See, what this so far we have talked about how can I structure my conversations and all, but we also know that in person interviews, life was slightly different, because it was the entire person present in front of the manager. Now in virtual screens, actually there is a small box, and most likely, you know, I'm visible up till only the shoulder or maybe just below the shoulder. So Dr. Srinivas, the question to you is, in virtual mode, what can interviewees do to improve and to create a positive executive presence, to so to say, so that they are actually able to give a positive impression on the hiring manager or the recruiter?
Sure. You know, appears soft, but I think very important on a few things. For example, it's funny, but the space that you give between your head and the screen, for example, it has got a lot of implication of how much is visible, for example. So, you know, the thumb rule is have not more than 4, right? One is appearance part of it, which means what are you wearing? Do you have a pen and paper? And like when we were talking, I saw Dr. Jesse making notes.
Yeah.
I'm sure Saurabh has one, I have one. I think these are basic fundamentals that I'm showing attention, and it's not that, you know, I'm making faces. That's one part. Second, I think some of the articulation, which are sure short questions, recent job, summer internship, as Saurabh has said, and so on and so forth that you talk about, please do rehearse. When I say rehearse, I'm not saying mug the answer. What is important in that? What was the objective? You know, what was the methodology used? What is the outcome of that? Because here, whether we like or not, with all the bandwidth, right, there's the attention span issue,
Okay.
right? So therefore, I have to capture the imagination of the person in whatever 45 seconds instead of 2 minutes, etc. So which means I think sure short things that you want to highlight, please, you know, have it. Third, I think be very familiar with the tool. I mean, you know, Pancham, that all 4 of us must have used these kind of tools day in, day out. But we made an effort the other day to do a mock of it, tried it out. You know, still today my bandwidth went away. But point is, that kind of preparation to show your seriousness also in the, you know, whole scheme of things. So I think one, the look and feel part of it. Second is the content being much more rehearsed, because here you don't have too much of time to do what is it. Third, I think sharpness in questions, which means when you are asking a few things, uh, make it very sharp, specific kind of stuff, you know, to say so. Fourth, I think important, again, I'm coming back to that. While in general, in any interview, integrity has to be high, but on an online interview, you know, make it much more specific and much more clearer rather than beating around the bush. Over to you.
Oh, thanks a lot, Dr. Srinivas. Actually, interestingly, I was actually trying to think about, because I just saw a message from Saurabh, because we know that we have just taken 9 minutes extra. So I will actually not take any more questions or ask you any more questions, but I'll quickly summarize. And the question that I was trying to ask myself, if I were to summarize in one word, what is the essence of getting a job or becoming more employable? The answer is prepare. So it's actually, come to think of it, when I prepare my resume, I have to think, I have to apply my mind, I have to actually do proofread, I have to do hundreds of things, number one. Second, uh, when I come for the interview, again, I have to prepare. I have to prepare about the job. I have to prepare about the company. I have to prepare about the interviewer at times, because that gives me a lot of insight into what the person is. When I'm actually preparing for the actual interview, the conversation, I have to rehearse. That means I have to prepare my answers. I have to also prepare my technology, my platform, my visual aids. I have to prepare myself. I have to dress up right for the occasion. And towards the end, when I'm given an opportunity to ask the right questions, I have to prepare in advance so that I ask the right questions, relevant questions, which tells the interviewer that the person actually gets it. So thanks for that. Actually, that's what I thought. It was a very interesting conversation, and I saw some comments also. So some people have also commented saying that they have really benefited from some of the tips that you talked about. So tips are very simple. Prepare. You can't prepare enough, number one. And more importantly, use your downtime judiciously. That is the key. There is no need for us to not be truthful and authentic. We should tell the truth. However, what we should do is we should have the better version of the truth. For example, if I don't have a job for 6 months, that's a reality. But how could I become better in those 6 months by taking up some certification courses or by upskilling them, by reskilling us, is the key. And as long as we are able to do that, and as long as we are able to make sure that the people who we are talking to are able to get that as an authentic effort and message, there is no reason why we will not be able to get the job. Right. On that note, I would like to thank the three esteemed panelists. Your suggestions, your feedback, your tips were very practical. We actually had practitioners' view. We also had actually the recruiter's view. We also had the domain from the business side view, and I'm very sure that the participants would have got a good complete overview of how they can prepare better for the next job. Best of luck, and do let us know if you get a job. So you should thank us, and we would be very happy. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and you let us know that you followed some of the tips and you were successful. And we would think that if we were able to help even one person, that we have done a great job of investing this 1 hour with all of you. On that note, thanks a lot.
Thank you
Best
so
of
much
luck
for the
for your future.
best of luck
Thank
to
you.
all of you.
Thank you.
All the
Thank you
best.
so much.